Quinn considered this entire charade to be ridiculous. It was quite clear to him that the tablet Jane held already had the information on him from his previous school. They should know that he had never possessed any ability and that his financial status would never allow him to buy one. And yet he struggled with the answer to her question. Before coming to military school, Quinn had done a bit of research himself. Unlike Peter, he already knew that the military freely gave all students who had no ability their very own ability book. Everyone would receive a Level 1 Earth ability book. This way, all those students like Peter would suddenly become indebted to the military. Not only that, but the military also had a hold on nearly all of the Earth-type ability books and the corresponding skill books. In other words, if you ever wanted to increase your strength, you would have to stay loyal to the military, and in return, they would give you more power. Before Quinn had been granted that system from his book, he had made up his mind to accept it. Even if he didn't join the military after 2 years, an Earth ability was handy to have. With it, one should be able to find quick employment, since the Earth ability was useful in construction. And this was exactly where the problem came in. Quinn already seemed to have an ability, which meant he was unable to learn a new one. The ability book they would give him was practically useless. He was also pretty sure they would keep tabs on every student they had given the ability book to, meaning the teachers would expect him to use Earth powers one of these days. Quinn took a deep breath and answered, "I don't have an ability." Just like before, the hooded man standing by Jane's side plucked a book from thin air and handed her the book. Her eyes were cold and emotionless as she handed it to Quinn. Quinn took the book from Jane, but suddenly another screen appeared before him.
Unable to learn this ability. Would you like to convert the book into 10 EXP?
Quinn had somewhat expected the system to display the first message, but the second one truly surprised him. He was really tempted to take the book and use it as a form of EXP, but he knew there would be questions asked later on. "I'm sorry, but I don't want it," Quinn said as he handed the book back to Jane. The instructor looked at him with raised eyebrows, the first sign of her being able to actually display any sort of emotion. In her 5 years working as an instructor, this was the first time someone with no ability had rejected the book. "Please give me one moment." Jane walked away from the group of students, who all looked at Quinn as if he was some sort of freak. Once she was far enough away from them, her hand went to her ear to activate the electronic piece inside. "A student by the name of Quinn Talon doesn't want to accept the ability book. I await instructions on how to deal with this outlier," Jane asked, speaking into her earpiece.
"No need to force him. Just let him take the test and report back if he shows promise,"
the mysterious man on the other side instructed her. As the man hung up, he couldn't help but think that this Quinn seemed like an interesting student. He began to check on the corresponding file, which left him puzzled. The student had no ability, and according to their research, he also should not have any relations with the group Pure either.
"Let's see how long you can survive in this cruel world, Quinn," the man said to himself, leaning back into his seat.
Jane adjusted her suit and headed back to the group of students.
"Apologies for keeping you all waiting,"
Jane noted stiffly. Then she turned to Quinn.
"Although you don't wish to accept the ability book, you're still required to take the test."
He found this to be quite the bizarre request. Was there really a need for him to take the test as someone without an ability? It felt like the only reason they wanted Quinn to continue was to humiliate him for refusing their help. Making him feel small and insignificant might lead to him approaching the military on his own and eventually beg for the ability book they were handing out.
"Please follow me."
Jane took Quinn a little further out onto the field, where Quinn noticed that there were huge craters in the ground, burn marks, patches of the ground scorched and burned like there had been some fire. This was all done during the previous testing of contestants. Please proceed to destroy the targets in front of you as quickly as you can, Jane instructed him. The test will begin immediately. As soon as Jane finished talking, 3 targets popped up out of the ground at random locations around the wasteland. They were metal round targets with a red dot in the center. The problem was, when Quinn tried to look for the targets, everything appeared like a blur in the distance. He noticed that his perfect eyesight suddenly wasn't so perfect anymore. Is this because I'm out in the sunlight? Quinn thought. Quinn had no choice but to slowly run up to each of the targets and hit them with his fist, one by one. Unsurprisingly, his time ended up being incredibly slow. After this, Jane asked him to complete 2 other tests. The second one was in regards to this strength test. All he needed to do was punch into a huge drum-like machine. Quinn gave it his best shot and hit the drum as hard as he could. The drum vibrated and made a small sound, eventually displaying a digital number in the center. Strength 5, Jane announced, and noted it down on her tablet. For the final test, there was a big circular machine with many holes on its front. It hovered over the ground without touching it. Once the test started, the machine fired holographic spikes at the examinee. All Quinn needed to do was avoid being hit by the spikes for as long as possible. The machine went up in levels and eventually got faster and shot out more spikes. It was a torturous process, and Quinn soon got tired of dodging and was hit. The machine whirred and ceased working. Agility 5, Jane announced this time, and once again noted it down. Quinn had heard the words from Jane's mouth, and it started to make him think if there was some kind of link between the scores she had given him. This test had focused on agility, and he had scored a 5, which was the same as his system. The same was true for the test before, which had revealed his 5 in strength. Quinn sighed internally. If only he could have taken these tests at night, he would have most likely doubled his scores. However, if his ability was indeed one allowing him to evolve, he could always try to take that test again. Quinn Talon, your overall current power level is that of a level 1 ability user, Jane informed him. Quinn clenched his fist and went back to stand with the others. He knew that the days ahead of him as a level 1 user would be harsh, but hopefully that would change in due time. The test continued with Layla being the next one to step forward. She was the only one among them who had a weapon on her back. Her weapon didn't look like a regular bow. It was different from the ones that people had used a long time ago. This bow was carved using the bones of some beast. It was polished to a shiny bronze, which glittered in the light. Quinn had heard about these beast weapons, but this was the first time seeing one. In fact, he would not have recognized it as such if it were not for the whispers from Varden beside him. When the human race had been attacked by the Dalki, the human technology had advanced fast by replicating their invaders' technology, and with this, the humans had gained the ability to travel to other planets using portals. These planets would often contain different levels of beasts. The stronger the beast was, the better weapon you could make out of it, provided you could kill it first, of course. It was strange to see someone as young as her, who had most likely never been to another planet, possess a beast weapon. Layla stood in the center of the field and waited for the test to start. Unlike when it was Quinn's turn, Jane waited until the girl was ready before starting. It was quite a difference in treatment. When the test started, 5 targets appeared in different areas of the wasteland. Layla immediately took out 5 arrows and placed them in her bow, shooting them all off at once in the same direction. The arrows shot out fast and strong, but then suddenly the 5 arrows split off, each in their own direction, each of them heading to a different target. What a good combo, Varden praised. Although telekinesis is considered quite weak, when paired with her bow to control the arrow's movements, it's very useful. Simultaneously, all 5 of the targets were hit, and she completed the first test. This one demonstration showed Quinn how useful beast weapons could be. Even if one had a weak ability, they could make it strong. Quinn wasn't completely sure what his ability was yet, but even if it just increased his stats as he leveled up, he imagined that pairing it with a weapon like a beast sword might also turn him powerful. On the strength test, Layla didn't do too well. She used her powers to try to move her fist even faster when punching the drum, but in the end, her score was only an 8. In the last test, Quinn also saw her do quite badly. When the test began, Layla had attempted to use her ability on the spikes coming at her. Unfortunately, she had been unaware that they were holograms and not the real thing, so it had no effect. This led to her nearly being hit at the start. After that, Layla relied on her actual body to avoid the spikes, yet she ended up getting the same score as Quinn. "It looks like you have the power level of a level 2 ability user," Jane informed her. As soon as the instructor had typed it in, the number 2 appeared on Layla's wrist. Quinn could tell Layla wasn't happy. She was red in the face as she stomped back towards the group. Quinn thought the test wasn't really fair. Her ability level might be that of a level 2, but when used with a bow, Quinn felt she could probably beat some level 3 or perhaps even level 4 ability users. Still, even if he voiced his opinion, who would listen to a measly level 1 like him? Quinn was starting to take note that the Academy really did only measure the power level of your ability and not your fighting ability. The next person to take the test was Erin. She walked forward confidently without even looking at anyone else. She stood in the center of the testing field, waiting for the test to start. 5 random targets appeared across the wasteland. She quickly formed an ice spear and chucked it at the first targets, hitting it dead on. She repeated this 4 more times at an incredible speed, nearly clearing them all just as fast as Layla did. For the next test, Erin's performance was even more impressive. She started to gather ice in both her palms, and then after a minute or so of gathering her power, a huge ice column shot out from her hands and hit the center of the drum dead on. The drum rang out louder than it had before, and the number kept going up until it had eventually reached 50. "No wonder she's so confident," Varden noted, a thoughtful expression on his face. Quinn realized it was a good thing the two of them didn't fight, otherwise Varden would have ended up a dead man. Finally, when it was time for the last test, the instructor told her she wasn't allowed to use her ability and should just dodge. Erin didn't object, and the test started immediately. She managed to do well, moving swiftly, avoiding each spike, but eventually the machine had gotten too fast and she ended up getting hit. "Impressive. Best result so far. So far, you're the 3rd first-year student with a power level of 5. Erin started walking back to her group, her face expressionless and unimpressed, as if she knew what she was going to get all along. Either that or she didn't really care about the whole thing. Finally, the last person to take the test in the group was Varden. "Time I show you what I got. Wish me luck." Quinn had no clue who Varden was talking to, but quickly realized it was him after Varden winked in his direction as he walked off to the center of the field. Could that idiot actually be strong? Quinn wondered. Most of the time, people who were strong were either arrogant, openly flaunting their powers, or kept quiet about them, but Varden was a strange person. He wasn't exactly arrogant, more like flashy. When the test started, everyone's mouth was left wide open at what they were seeing. On every single one of the tests, Varden copied the exact same moves as Erin. He used the very same ice ability, performed just as well as Erin. "See, I told you I was strong." Varden gleefully pointed at the number 5 to his seemingly new best friend, Quinn. After seeing Varden perform well on the test, Quinn couldn't help but think about what Varden's ability was. When Varden went to shake his hand when they first met, his system had informed him that Varden had tried to use his ability on Quinn. Yet for some reason, whatever he had tried to do had been unsuccessful. If Varden's ability had been ice, surely his hand would have just frozen. Unless Quinn's ability was to block all types of other abilities, but that seemed highly unlikely. Not only that, but Varden had a very strange reaction about it, even asking Quinn what his ability was. Thinking about it, Varden noticed another strange thing in the other boy's behavior. For some reason, he had been very adamant about shaking the hands of everyone he had just met. Although Erin had refused his gesture, in the end, hadn't Varden still ended up touching her on the shoulder? At that time, it seemed like a weird thing to do, but thinking about it, it all made sense. Touching had to be like a condition for Varden's ability, and the last person he had touched had been Erin. It couldn't be a coincidence that both of them had the same powers. In that case, Varden's ability was most likely the kind to copy other people's ability. and it hadn't worked on Quinn because his ability wasn't straightforward. Quinn couldn't help his curiosity, so he asked Varden. "Hey, Varden, is your ability—" Quinn whispered to the boy next to him, "Are you able to copy other people's abilities?" Varden looked at Quinn and smiled slyly. "That's the first time someone has figured it out so fast. How did you figure it out?" "When you shook my hand, you seemed surprised that nothing happened." Varden had believed he had given himself away by insisting on touching Aaron, yet Quinn had seemingly deduced it by the earlier handshake. He had to give him some credit for that. After all, it wasn't outside the realm of possibility that Varden had coincidentally obtained the ice ability from an ability book as well. Quinn's brows were furrowed in thought as he stared at his new friend. He had never heard about an ability book that could grant one the power to copy the abilities from others, which could only mean one thing. "Are you an original?" Quinn asked for confirmation. Varden didn't say anything but simply winked back at Quinn, which pretty much confirmed his theory. Although all abilities were derived from originals, nowadays it was used to refer to a person belonging to one of those families who had decided against sharing their abilities with the outside world. It was even rumored that the strongest originals had the power to easily surpass the power level of 8. Once the test had been completed, the hooded man teleported the students to the front of the academy, where they would be staying. The academy was huge and the tallest building in the entire city. It was as if someone had put together 3 hotels. There were 10 different teachers in total who stood in front of the academy. Once in a while, a group of 5 students would be teleported in front of one of the teachers and told to wait until all the students had finished conducting their tests. Eventually, there were a total of 20 students in front of the teacher Quinn and his group had been assigned to. "Okay, all of you need to follow me as I take you around the school," the teacher up front told them. Dell was a middle-aged man with blonde, curly hair who wore glasses. While Dell was walking around, describing the various places in the vicinity of the academy, he had a perpetual easy smile on his face, like nothing would be able to upset him. "You guys should start to get to know each other as much as you can," Dell suggested. "After all, the people you are with now will be your classmates." All of a sudden, everyone started to get chattier, talking to each other as they were being shown around the school. However, there was an annoying thing that Quinn noticed. The level 2s were trying their best to befriend the level 3s, while the level 3s attempted to do the same with the level 4s. Quinn and Peter appeared to be the only 2 level 1s in the class. Even without realizing it, they had been pushed to the back of the group, and Peter was plodding along with his head held down. It seemed to have affected Peter a lot more than Quinn, but the latter had already predicted this outcome during the examination. This was no different from regular school. He still looked around for his new friend and discovered that Varden was nowhere to be found. "There you are," Varden called. "Man, suddenly all those students just started jumping all over me. Next thing I know, I look to my right side and you're gone. Come on, let's look around together, buddy." Quinn truly considered Varden to be a strange person, yet that wasn't a bad thing. Varden noticed Peter next to Quinn. "Oi, you, stop being a downer and come with us." Peter looked up and pointed a finger to himself. "Yes, you, Peter. Do you see anyone else beside Quinn?" Varden asked in his boisterous voice. The 3 of them continued the tour at the back of the class, while the teacher kept leading them around the school. In the midst of the tour, a battle arena was shown to the students, where they had similar testing equipment to the ones in the wasteland, as well as several square fighting platforms. They were also shown their homeroom classes, battle classes, sports rooms, and all other sorts of facilities. Dell never failed to provide a little bit of explanation for each area of the school they visited. However, Quinn was uninterested in most of them until they had finally reached the library. "As you can see, the library here is split into 3 floors. First-year students are only able to access the first floor. Second-year students can access the second floor. Finally, the upper floor is only for authorized military personnel." Quinn was interested in the library because it contained books that weren't available to the public. In this place, Quinn just might be able to find some information about his ability, though he earnestly hoped that it would be on the first floor. Eventually, the tour came to an end just outside the school's dorms. "And this is where you will be living during your stay here. Once you have dropped off your things, feel free to explore around the academy. There will be no lessons today, so enjoy the free time and make sure to be in your rooms during the curfew." Each student was then handed a number written on a piece of paper. These papers displayed which room they would be staying in. From the corner of his eye, Quinn noticed his eye that Varden was coming towards him.
"Hey, Quinn, what room number did you get?" Varden asked. 23. "No way, what a coincidence! I got the same number. Seems like fate is really bringing us together," Varden noted excitedly. "Maybe," Quinn replied. Somewhere down the hallway, 2 other students were having a conversation. "Whoa, what happened to you?" a student asked as he looked over to his disheveled friend. "I don't know, man. Some guy just appeared and hit me out of nowhere, forcing me to swap room numbers." "Man, should we try to get it back?" the student suggested. "I'm pretty sure I saw his wrist showing a 5. It's best if we just leave it. It's just a room after all." After Quinn had finished unpacking, he was free to do what he wanted for the rest of the day. It was still noon, so he had plenty of time to explore the academy. Quinn ended up sharing his room with 2 people, and to his surprise he knew both of them, Varden and Peter. There were 3 single beds in the room, each spread out from one another evenly, but other than that, the room was pretty empty. There was just a single desk and a cupboard for each person to use by the side of their bed. Students were expected to spend most of their time studying or practicing their skills, as there was no time for pleasure. That was why the rooms were designed for efficiency. "What do you guys want to do then?" Varden asked the others. "I'm still unpacking, but you 2 don't have to wait for me. Feel free to go out and explore," Peter replied meekly. Peter had opened up a little to the 2 of them. At first, he was completely shy and hardly uttered a word, unless specifically asked, but slowly he seemed to be coming out of his shell, especially around Quinn. Peter most likely felt comfortable around Quinn, knowing that they were both level 1 ability users. "I was thinking of heading to the library," Quinn said. "That will probably be too boring for you." "Boring? Please, I can make anything fun. Besides, I haven't read a book in..." Varden paused for a while. "I can't even remember the last time I read a book." The 3 of them laughed before Varden and Quinn agreed to head to the library together. When they arrived, they found that the first floor was surprisingly bustling with students. Quinn noticed that there were multiple round desks spread out where students were sitting, and in the middle of the desk was a glowing orb. "Ah, you're probably wondering what that orb thing is in the middle, aren't you?" Varden asked. "It looks like they don't have them in public schools. If you touch the orb, then it allows you to create an isolated space. Inside, only those people who have been invited can hear each other. This way, people are able to chat as much as they want without disturbing others." "Wow!" Quinn was quite surprised at how far technology had evolved. Quinn and Varden chose a table that had 2 other people sitting on one. Just as Varden had explained, Quinn could see the 2 talking, but couldn't hear a word. According to Varden, the orb had a limited range and could only cover the surrounding tables, though. Quinn searched around the first floor of the library and picked up as many books as he could about abilities, most of them listing and describing the most common abilities. Varden wasn't too bothered and decided to just select a random fiction book to read. The 2 sat at their tables, while Quinn started to flicker away. After skimming through several books, he had been unable to find a single one that sounded like his ability. Varden had kept a close eye on Quinn and had noticed the type of books he had been picking out. "What's with all the books? Are you looking for something in particular?" Quinn thought about it for a while before giving Varden an answer. Given his own ability, he should be quite knowledgeable about abilities. "I was trying to decide what ability to get, since I've turned down the school's offer." "Oh, right, I nearly forgot about that already. To be honest, I thought you might have been one of those pure members who hate abilities," Varden said with a big grin on his face. "Well, is there anything specific you're looking for?" "Not really, although I found something very interesting in one of those books. Have you ever heard of an ability that is weaker in sunlight?" Varden suddenly started to laugh out loud. "What are you, crazy? I've never heard of something like that. Abilities are something our bodies learn. Sure, some people have limits and can't adapt to stronger abilities or can do less than others, but for one to get weaker because of the sun? Are you sure you have not accidentally grabbed a fantasy book about vampires?" Quinn felt a little embarrassed by Varden's reaction. Of course, he understood this reaction was pretty normal. Would he have reacted any differently if someone had asked him about an ability making one grow stronger, depending on how full the moon was? Unfortunately, the reality was that as long as Quinn stayed in direct sunlight, all of his stats would weaken by half. He continued to look around the library to see if there was anything else he could find. Eventually, he had gone through every single one of the books detailing abilities. Quinn then considered trying his chances by going a floor above where there were some second-year students. "Maybe there's something up there. but I can't imagine what the Academy would do to me for breaking the rules, especially on the first day. I might already be on their radar for refusing their Earth ability book. No reason to make them any more suspicious, Quinn thought. As Quinn continued to walk around the library, he considered what Varden had said. Perhaps he really should venture into the fiction section and see if he might be lucky. What's the worst thing that could happen? A book titled The Truth About Vampires immediately caught his interest. Quinn took out the book and gave it a quick look. Despite abilities being widely accepted, there was not a single person who had come out claiming to be a vampire. Quinn couldn't help but sate his curiosity, so he started to read the book. After reading and skimming through the book, Quinn found most of it to be useless. A lot of the things that vampires didn't relate to him at all. Vampires were required to drink human blood. Some could transform themselves into bats and cast illusions, while others were incredibly skilled with the sword and hypnosis, but Quinn had none of those things. The only thing he could relate to was getting weakened by the sun. Eventually, Quinn decided to close the book and call it a day. It didn't seem like he was going to find anything from the first floor of the library. As soon as Quinn closed the book, though, he heard a familiar sound, and the pop-up appeared at the corner of his eyes again. You have gained more knowledge about the system. 10 EXP received. 15 of 100 EXP. What? Quinn blurted out. Quinn stared long and hard at the message and reread it multiple times. It can't be. Why did I get EXP from reading that fantasy book? He knew he had to test it out. After reading several different books about abilities, not a single one had given him EXP, but for some reason this one did. He decided to pick up another fantasy story, one about dragons, this time titled Reincarnated into a Human. He did the same as before and skimmed through most of it, reading only the headings and subheadings. When he closed the book, there was no reaction. It was the expected result. Filled with the urge to test one more thing, he picked up another book that was also about vampires and did the same. When he closed the book, the system still showed no reaction at all. In the end, Quinn theorized that after reading all the books, he might have gained so much knowledge about abilities that the system had chosen to reward him. The, for some reason, delayed message had only coincidentally appeared right at the time he was reading up on vampires. Naturally, there was another possibility, but that one was a little harder for him to believe. He didn't wish to believe that the book about vampires had somehow been related to his system. When Quinn finished checking things out at the library, he noticed that Varden had disappeared from the table and was no longer there. He must have gotten bored and gone somewhere else. I'll probably see him later in our room. Quinn looked outside the window and noticed the sun was starting to set. He had been in the library for a total of 6 hours so far, and he had not even noticed the time fly by. Then, when Quinn was just about to leave, a new message popped into his view again. Daily quest number 2 has been completed. 5 EXP received. 20 of 100 EXP. Each time Quinn got a message from this strange thing inside his body, he got a satisfying feeling, seeing the number inch closer to 100. Beneath it, there was a certain uncertainty, a dreaded thought that this would end badly. Nevertheless, he couldn't wait to see what would happen once he had reached the goal. His best guess was that he would level up. After all, the system even stated that he couldn't use his shop feature until he was at least a level 10. The only thing Quinn wished for at the moment was a quicker way to level up. With just the 2 daily quests a day, it would take over a week until Quinn reached level 2. Right now, there wasn't much he could do about it. He could only live his everyday life as a normal person. As Quinn left the library, he decided to head to the battle arena. A thought had seized his mind, and he wanted to try something out. He was walking through the school hallway when he saw a kid being pushed up against the wall by another student. The boy on the wall looked like he had already been hit a few times and had bruises on his face. So it really did start here as well, Quinn thought dejectedly. He managed to catch a glimpse of the boy's wristwatch and saw that the number on it indicated that the boy was a level 1 ability user but had a power level of 1.2. Quinn was quite surprised at this, as the bully was very weak himself, which was a rare occurrence. The only people he would be able to bully were people who had a power level of 1.0, like Quinn or Peter. That's when Quinn suddenly recognized the one who was up against the wall. It was, in fact, Peter. Quinn was debating with himself whether or not to get involved in the first place. He hated bullies more than anything. They had ruined his school life, and chances were that soon enough he might become a target as well. He quickly made up his mind. He had wanted to test out his strength, and it seemed fate had presented him with the perfect guinea pig. The student in front of him was only at a power level of 1.2, so there was a high chance he could win, especially inside where he was not weakened by the sun. The student lifted his fist again to give Peter another punch. "You think you can just bump into me like that, say sorry, and that's it?" he shouted as he swung his fist. Quinn started to walk by as if he was not seeing the fight between the two. The bully was so engrossed in his act that he didn't notice Quinn until the latter pretended to fall over and bumped into the student, causing him to stumble off balance and miss. "Quinn?" Peter asked as he looked up. "What the hell was that for?" the student shouted, sizing up the person who had bumped into him. The first place the student's eyes went to was, of course, Quinn's watch. Seeing the low number, his confidence grew. "What the hell is a level 1 piece of rubbish like you doing?" "I was waiting to see how long it would take for someone like you to appear. It seems like I lost a bet with myself. I thought it would at least take a couple of days before you would act out." "And what do you think you're going to do about it?" Peter was starting to feel slightly worried about Quinn. Earlier at the test site, Quinn had revealed that no ability, while the student he was facing did have one. Peter thought they might stand a chance if the two of them fought together, but he was too afraid. If possible, he would have liked to avoid any further confrontation. He had been hurt his whole life and didn't want to be hurt anymore. Sadly, this was just how the world worked. The people at the top were the ones with the strongest powers, so nobody could stop them from bullying those who were weaker than them, and in turn they bullied the even weaker ones. In the past, Peter had tried fighting back. It was when the bullying had only just started at his old school. He had thrown back a punch and had even managed to hit the person in the face, but it had only made things worse. As a result, he had been beaten 10 times harder than normal, and ever since the bullying had only worsened. For the new bully, he had been on the bottom of the social ladder, yet, for the first time ever, he had met someone even weaker than him. All the pain he had suffered through, for once, he wanted to be on the other side. That way he didn't feel like he was at the bottom of the food chain. Quinn then noticed that the student had both of his hands held behind his back, as if he was preparing something, and a notification popped up before him. "An enemy ability user has been detected. Initiating battle mode. You have received a new quest. First fight, defeat your opponent. Reward 50 EXP. To Peter, it looked as if Quinn had gone mad. Not only did he agree to a fight, but Quinn also had a giant grin on his face as he held up his hand in what looked like a badly copied battle stance. How was Peter supposed to know that Quinn was elated to have found a fast way to level up?
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.